I wanted to share some behind the scenes on this new documentary about motherhood in America. The group reached out to me, Moms First, about being part of this documentary on motherhood. I've been very outspoken about how there's so much of a negative narrative on motherhood in America, and that we should actually talk about the positives of it. I've also been outspoken about trying to find policy ideas that are good for all women. It doesn't have to be a right or a left issue. We could find some policies that would positively impact all women, no matter your politics. For example, those of you who followed my work know I've worked on some occupational licensing reform, which had no opposition on one of the policies that we worked on changing. So I think they were really interested in hearing about what are some unifying efforts that could be done to benefit women that don't feel so partisan. Last fall, I went up to New York City for the day and recorded for about an hour. They had rented a little house, so you can see the different backgrounds for the different experts that they have in the video. We were all in like little different spaces of this house. It was cool to kind of see it happen. They had a makeup artist there and hair, and it was fun to talk about a lot of these issues. I enjoyed the interview. I got to talk about opportunity feminism, talk about why New got started. They were interested in the history of the conservative movement, so I talked about early roots, conservative feminism and what that looks like. What were some of the early battles, some of the battles today, and some of the issues, for example, girl boss versus trad wives. And, that narrative makes it in the film. I think that was a good place for them to start at the beginning of the film, is that's the part of the issue that a lot of people are talking about right now.
Who would you rather marry, a girl boss or a trad wife?
Working moms versus stay-at-home moms.
You have working moms, you have stay-at-home moms, and then you have work-from-home, stay-at-home moms.
We then got into some of the policies. I talked about occupational licensing reform. We talked about daycare in this country, and I shared why I thought universal free daycare was not a good idea and actually wouldn't be good for mothers and children. We then talked a little bit about paid leave and where the U.S. is on that and the downside of federal paid leave. So we talked a lot about a number of issues impacting women and moms. I just wish a little bit more of that could have made it into the film. But I also understand that only so much can make it in the film, and they've got a perspective that they wanted to get across. And I'm thankful for having had the opportunity to participate in it. As anybody who's probably been part of a documentary might say, they just wish that they could have gotten a little bit more in there. So I thought I might just share on here a little bit more of what I would have wanted to get it in there if time would allow. And I understand these things are tough, as a lot of things have to be cut for a final product. The movie is less than an hour and a half. And they've had multiple people on to discuss their work. The documentary supports the idea of free daycare. During my interview, I talked about some of the disadvantages to that, which didn't make it in. For example, I believe that whatever daycare you're using right now, that's not the same. If you are using daycare, that is not the same daycare as what would happen if there was a federal mandate for daycare. I think the quality would change, the rules would change, it would be different. So I think that's a challenge there. I also think it didn't explore the costs of what this daycare is. It didn't explore who would be making the rules and decisions on this daycare. So I think there's a lot of negative aspects that weren't included in the film. I was thankful there's one husband in there who raises the issue of, he's maybe a little uncertain about it. And they did include that, which I'm thankful, like at least somebody raising the question. I think this could be a launching point for more of a discussion about what women want, what's best for mothers, what's best for children, what's best for families. But it's certainly not a comprehensive discussion of the entire daycare issue in America. I trust our audience and our viewers will be able to see that, maybe there's an alternative out there and they should dig into that. So I encourage you, if you've watched the film and are now raising questions about universal free childcare, look at the bigger picture of not just, the idea of free childcare, but what are the downsides of that? And how could those downsides also impact you and your family? If you're interested in learning more about my experience in this documentary or daycare policy in the US or policies that impact mothers in the US, make sure to follow my Substack, Opportunity Feminism.